He didn't go there on Mike Vrabel today. Was not going to talk about it. The opening statement was great. I think the one part that will have fans immediately concerned is the backing of Elliott Wolf in this press conference, referencing needing good drafts while also speaking highly of a new grading system that Elliott Wolf has implemented. If that new grading system got them Polk and Baker, I'd be a little concerned. Instead, Kraft is saying we may have 2 quarterbacks on our roster, referencing Joe Milton's day yesterday.
He jumped out.
I'm not concerned yet.
I thought Robert came out great. Just quick, swift, to the point. It genuinely felt like he said, like, I effed up. I feel awful for this. I feel awful for him. We didn't help him. And I'm at fault for it.
Strong stuff. Questions, go. Like, this is,
we're going to fix this thing. I get the feeling of that, like, this is going to be fixed. I don't know what the results will be, but they're going to get after it. And that's good. That's sitting around just hiring anybody. You know, the Jonathan question, too. He's like, he's been with me for how many years now, too? Like, it's us. And then the question of who's going to run these questions and interviews. Him, Jonathan, Elliott, Alonzo Highsmith. Football people will be in that room. Like, whatever you think of them, Elliott and Highsmith are football people. Guys that have been around the game and dealt with it in the NFL.
Not concerned yet.
You should be a little more nervous than what you were.
I'm not there yet, McCone. Give it time. Let it breathe.
I mean, it took balls what he did.
Remember
yesterday.
to breathe.
Yeah.
I just go back to the quotes that Elliott Wolf had from Henry McKenna talking about the internal development was not what we thought it was. And I wonder if
they sided with somebody.
Maye was the fall guy there for Elliott Wolf in the front office.
How'd they look?
We drafted the right guys, but they weren't developed properly.
I'm handing you Jalen Polk, a high production receiver from Washington that had big numbers. That got through camp, a long, arduous camp. And he played hard, and he caught the ball and it was thrown to him. Wasn't fantastic, but okay. That guy's a plug-and-play player. Like, good.
Let's go back to Foxborough. Phil Perry, NBC Sports Boston. You hear him every week on this show. He is in the room. Phil, what are your big takeaways from Robert Kraft's press conference?
Yeah, number one, the direction of the franchise and reaching the highs that they did. I put that word in quotation marks in Cincinnati, winning a regular season game week 1 against a team that, let's be honest, was thought to be at least a playoff contender, if not a Super Bowl contender at the time. And then to see them trend the way they did in the last month especially is what Robert Kraft highlighted here, is what got them to move off their spot. I mean, they knew Jerod Mayo was inexperienced. They knew he was surrounded by inexperienced people at all levels of the football operation, front office, coaching staff, and yet they still go ahead and make this move because they saw the way in which things were trending. And so I find that interesting, especially given what we know is a real significant emotional investment in Jerod Mayo from Robert Kraft specifically, and he highlighted that here today.
Phil, any major explanations on the departure with Drake Maye today, not speaking to the press, but as we found out, other captains did not also. Have you got any more information on that?
I would chalk that up to a young guy making a mistake.
Really? Individual, huh?
Yeah, I think the way it was explained to the players was media is allowed to be in the room one last time. It's our obligation as an organization to open up the locker room. It is not your obligation to meet with them. And so if you'd like to, have at it. If not, you're free to go. And I think he obviously took the latter option. Again, a guy who's obviously a rookie, he's 22 years old, maybe something that somebody could have informed him on, hey, it might be a good idea as the leader of this team, as a de facto leader of this team, might be a good idea for you to meet with the media, but passed on that opportunity. Maybe. I don't know if he was given that message or not. Like, I want to be clear. I don't know if anybody said anything to him along those lines, but you would hope that would be the case.
Yeah, we got to speculate on this. I kind of start thinking, like, okay, what the hell has this kid ever did wrong? Like, he's handled everything perfectly. So what if you have to speculate?
If he was asked to stay, I think if he was asked to stay, he would have stayed. Just knowing the guy and knowing his interactions with the media and interactions that I've had with him. So, I'd chalk it up to a rookie mistake on his part and maybe a mistake on the people around him, maybe not letting him know that it'd be a good idea for him to stick. I just want to one other, and I want to hear your guys' reaction to it too, because one other big takeaway from the Kraft press conference for me is the idea of the potential arranged marriage between Elliot Wolf and the personnel department and whoever ends up being the head coach here. I would have loved to have clarified with Robert Kraft. I had my hand up. I don't know if you could see it on camera, but I had my hand up, a little pathetic by me, knowing that the last question had been given to Tom Carm, but kept it up there anyway on the off chance I'd be given the opportunity. But he made it clear that he plans on Elliot Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith and others being back next year. Does that mean they're back to run the personnel department? Are they going to be back to work under Mike Vrabel or anybody else at head coach who would have personnel decisions and final say on the roster? Or are they here to just continue to work under the titles that they have, and maybe whoever the next head coach is brings in his own general manager and brings one person with him to run the operation, and everybody will answer to that guy? That is a question that I still think we're not sure of, but it was pretty clear that Robert Kraft wanted Elliot Wolf and others in that front office back for 2025. I'm just not sure in what capacity. I would have loved to ask him about it.
But I think you're asking the right questions, Phil, about that, about if he is staying and he is involved in the process, how does his job change from what it was this year, potentially moving forward with a new head coach? Because I think the scenarios you lay out, I think they're all in play. A head coach like Mike Vrabel getting final say over the roster, controlling the draft board, or that head coach bringing in someone with the title of general manager who Elliot Wolf then works under. I think all of that is in play, which is why I'm not too worked up about it just yet today.
Yeah, I find that whole situation to be fascinating, and I found it interesting that Robert went into a little bit of detail as to why he likes the people that are in the front office now, and he seems to see promise in the system that they have brought in, the Packer way. Beetle, I'm sure you have Ron Wolf's book right there by your side right now, and you can read all about it.
There. Always.
But they Always like the system, seemingly. And so does that mean they get to run the front office and they get to run it back for a second year? Or, there are other people out there who run that same system. There's a lot of them, actually. And there's one guy who just got requested for an interview by the Jets, Mike Borgonzi, who's the assistant general manager in Kansas City, but worked under John Dorsey, longtime Packers exec, a mentor to Elliot Wolf, was the general manager.
Local guy.
Borgonzi's from Everett, but he would speak the same language, and he would run the same system. So that would sort of, if they decide to bring in somebody like a Vrabel, and by the way, Borgonzi and Vrabel overlapped in Kansas City for the years that Vrabel was there. Borgonzi's been there for a long time. And so if it's Vrabel, and the Krafts really want the same system and want to keep the same system, would they bring in somebody like Borgonzi to kind of come in over the top of the guys they already have?
Interesting how that could play out. You got something there, McCone?
Yeah, what was the feel inside the locker room with the players that did speak today, Phil?
Yeah, it was a down room, I think, in certain corners. Other corners, you've got young guys, you've got guys that are new to the organization and not really tied to the organization, or Mayo, really. Beyond their experience with them this year. And so I've been in much sadder locker rooms at the ends of seasons, I'll say that. Teams that, had a chance, teams whose seasons ended much sooner than they thought. Let's be real. I mean, these guys knew their season was over a long time ago. And so, some of the veteran players, Dietrich Wise, Devon Godchaw, those guys, I think, both really loved Mayo. And, Godchaw in particular at times sounded emotional to me in detailing, some of the things he's feeling at the moment. And so that's to be expected. Was hoping to get a chance to talk to Jelani Tavai, who was in the locker room today, was not afforded that opportunity. Given his comments of the last week, I think it would have been good to get a gauge on where his head is at. Haven't seen his head coach go out the door. And just given the lack of experience and leadership on this team, he ended up being sort of a de facto leader. It would have been a good chance to talk to him, but we were not allowed to talk to Jelani today.
Do you have any inklings as to what the real comments were when he exited last night? Because
I don't.
He took some shots.
I don't. I didn't hear anything from him last night, but I did hear that there might have been something said. So it would have been good to follow up with him. He's an adult. He's been in the league a long time. He said some things. He not only stood by him, but he doubled and quadrupled down on him last week. And so again, would have been a nice opportunity to talk to him, but I guess we'll have to wait till next year if he's back.
Phil, last thing I got, and that is, have you spoken to anybody in the organization, coaches, scouts, front office people? What's sort of the vibe with all the people involved?
Yeah, it's interesting. The personnel side of things, I would say I was given an indication last night that the expectation was that, those guys were going to be back. They were talking about getting this thing right this coming off season. And so it looks like, based on what we heard from ownership here today, that may actually play out, and they will be given a chance to really sort of steer this operation in the right way. I would also say that, there are people who look at this from afar and really feel as though fan reaction and the overall environment and the overall landscape here locally, media, radio, which we're doing right, television, everything, it's all part of the experience. And I think people from afar look at the decision by Kraft and say it had to have been impacted by what has been going on, especially over the course of the last few months, and the emotion that has been directed at Jerod Mayo, and they look at the future and they say they better get somebody who can handle that. And I do think that should be a real factor for the Krafts and for Elliott and for Alonzo Highsmith and anybody else that's involved in this coaching search. You got to have somebody who's going to be able to handle that part of the job and handle it well. And to me, that only further solidifies Vrabel as the top choice here, because he's one guy I think we all would agree not only would welcome it, but would probably enjoy it to a degree, depending on how the football team's playing.
Hey, if you like that clip, check out more videos from Zolak and Bertrand right here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.